I painted this portrait about as fast as I could, but it did not make the piece looser or more expressive. In fact, it made it worse. So in this video, I'm going to break down the exact reasons why painting fast backfires and what to do instead if your goal is to break free from tight oil painting and become more stylish with your brushwork without sacrificing realism or likeness. If you're new here, my name is Chelsea, and I help experienced oil painters master confident, expressive brushwork, especially when it comes to painting portraits. I teach the exact process that allowed me to go from working a day job to becoming a full-time artist, and that very process recently won me the Oil Painters of America Gold Medal. Now, if you want to learn that whole process in depth, I have a free masterclass linked down in the description that you won't want to miss. But for right now, let's dive into this painting and talk about why just painting faster or using bigger brushes isn't going to transform your art. The biggest misconception I see is that speed equals spontaneity. But here's the truth. If you've ever had the pleasure of watching someone known for their brushwork, someone like Richard Schmid or Daniel Keyes, paint in real time, one of the first things you'll notice is that despite their brushwork having incredible energy and confidence, they're actually very slow, deliberate painters. They're often slowest in the beginning stages too, when they're first blocking in. And that's usually when we like to rush the most as painters because there's so much bare canvas that we feel the need to fill up quickly. And that's exactly what happened to me with this piece. A lot of the artists painting this model had been down here painting all day, and I sat down and got my paints out with only a few minutes left in the session. So right away, I was primed to feel like I just had to make up for lost time. Cue the bad decisions. Looking at this painting now, I can see exactly where that rushed mentality hurt me. The flesh tones are muddy because I put down an overall tone on the canvas early. The likeness is off in some places because I didn't slow down to double check my drawing, and the brushwork looks frantic rather than confident because each stroke was reactive, an effort to just finish the darn thing already, rather than an intentionally planned brushstroke to create a beautiful image. Now, if I contrast this with the painting that won me the OPA Gold Medal this past October, this piece may look like I painted it quickly or spontaneously, but actually, this painting was planned out to a T. Even the abstract brush marks in the background, especially the abstract brush marks in the background. So before I started this piece, I first had a great reference photo whose composition and lighting mirrored the art that I aspire to make. I also created a detailed mock-up that showed me exactly what I wanted the finished product to look like, which effectively took out all the guesswork. So when I sat down to finally start painting, all I had to do was to execute my plan. Every brushstroke had a purpose. But with this rushed portrait study, I wasn't working off of a reference photo or a mock-up. I had to make decisions as I went along, at least somewhat. And without a roadmap helping me, I got a little lost. So let me break down the specific issues that come up when we prioritize speed over strategy. Problem number one, the color gets muddy. When you're rushing, you don't take time to clean your brush between mixtures. You put down paint without actually checking whether the color is accurate, and what you wind up with are gray, lifeless colors, or in this case, very brown colors. Problem number two, you skip the foundation. So fast painters often jump straight to the details without establishing big, accurate relationships of the big shapes first. Problem number two, you skip the foundation. So painters who work too quickly are often doing so because they want to jump straight into the details before they've actually established a strong foundation first. When it comes to portraiture, that strong foundation comes down to the big overarching shapes that establish the likeness. And if you're rushing, it's kind of like trying to decorate a house before you've actually built the walls. And then problem number three, panic brushwork. When you're racing against time, your brush strokes often become reactive instead of proactive and confident. You can actually see the anxiety in the paint handling, especially if you notice that you're putting down a mark over and over again. This doesn't come from having carefully planned out what you're painting. No, it comes from not knowing what you need to be doing, and so you kind of go into autopilot instead. And before I go any further, I want to fess up. When you watch my videos, what you see are often sped up brushstrokes, but my paintings don't take 20 minutes, and I often sit for painstaking moments that are edited out of my videos where I'm just considering the next mark before I make it. At least that's what I do when I'm in flow and I'm setting myself up for success. But for the sake of making entertaining and constructive YouTube content, that stuff usually gets edited out because no one wants to sit around and literally watch paint dry. But the problem is that you get left with this impression that I am working much faster than I actually am, and that you're really missing out on observing when I'm taking time to just think, which is very often. So what does create that coveted, loose, expressive brushwork? Well, it's not speed. It's these three things. First, intentional mark making. Every brushstroke should really be thoughtfully considered. Now, you don't have to take it to the extreme and create a mock-up that shows you every single brushstroke that you need to put into the final painting. But it is worth it to really stop and think before you put brush to canvas. Number one is intentional mark making. So every brushstroke you put down should be thoughtfully considered and maybe even planned. Planning your brushstrokes can be especially helpful if you're trying to shift out of your comfort zone or bad habits when it comes to your brushwork, especially if you aren't sure whether some bold marks could result in a big mess. But even if you're not necessarily planning every brushstroke, you should at least be taking the time to consider or think about every brushstroke before you commit the paint to canvas. Number two is a reliable process. So you need to know the order in which your painting needs to go down onto the canvas so you can avoid things like redrawing the figure or trying to fix muddy, overmixed colors because you just didn't happen to put down your paint in the correct order, like I did here. And number three, a strong foundation of drawing. Paradoxically, the more accurately you can see and draw, the fewer strokes you actually need to describe something convincingly. So when in doubt, study the speed at which your favorite painters actually work, especially in the beginning stages when they're just establishing their block-in or preliminary drawing. It serves as a really powerful reminder to apply your paint more mindfully and really think through how to make the most stylish mark the first time so no reworking will be necessary. I often like to do this myself from time to time, checking out videos from my favorite painters where I do get to see them working in real time. Not only does this fill me with inspiration, but it also serves as a really helpful reminder that slowing down usually creates a painting that feels more spontaneous. And that's the irony. When you actually slow down and think through your approach, you actually end up painting faster in the long run because you make fewer mistakes that need fixing, and the piece often looks way more spontaneous and your brushwork looks more energetic because you're not having to cover up those really nice loose marks because they just weren't fully considered before you made them. And remember, those masters with the most expressive brushwork didn't get there by painting fast. They got there by painting smart. They developed a clear vision and such a practiced technique that they could work with both confidence and efficiency. So if you want to dive deeper into developing this kind of clear artistic vision and confident technique, I walk through my complete process step by step in my free masterclass that's linked below. I promise it'll change how you approach every painting. As you check that out, I want to ask you, what is your biggest struggle when it comes to developing looser brushwork? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I often make videos based on your questions. And if this video helped you to see brushwork in a new way, make sure to subscribe because I have new painting insights that I share on my channel every Saturday. I'm excited to see you in the next one, and until then, happy painting.
She's not on the farm. selling cider?
Switch brushes.
Oh, they did? Oh, see, that's good. I thought it was, at first it was just one more. Yeah. Exactly. So is it still over in Germantown?
Yeah.
So the whole first floor. So I remember there was like a sort of a downward place, and then they probably made that into a pool. So is it? Can you go into the backspace?